Well, hi there everyone. My name is Kareth. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I usually release a video every Thursday, but today is a bonus weekend video for you. So here you go, Rebecca, a Sunday video. I hope everyone is having a good weekend so far. It's finally September and I just had to do a fall recipe to celebrate. Now this dessert in a jar can be made with different fruits. I'm going to use the Granny Smith apples. You could also substitute peaches or blueberries in here. I've had this pie recipe for about 15 years and I got it from a Taste of Home magazine at my grandmother's house. I hadn't even planned on making a video today. I was originally just going to try to convert this recipe to a meal in a jar, but I just got out my camera and I filmed it anyway. So I'm just going to bring you along with me. This is my very first attempt at this pie recipe as a meal in a jar, and I'll show you, mistakes and all, how it turned out. So I'm starting with a quart-sized jar. I had put 2 cups of flour in the bottom of the jar, and I'm just adding the rest of the crust ingredients. So I've got a little bit of sugar, some salt, some baking powder, and that's just the crust ingredients. You will have to add a stick of butter to that when you make it. All right, I'm going to fit the fruit in that same jar, and you want to keep the apples separate, or if you're doing peaches, you want to keep them separate. So you can put it in a baggie. If you don't want to combine the fruit with the crust, you could just use a pint-sized jar for the crust recipe and use a pint-sized jar for the fruit if you want to keep them separate. But I just wanted to show you, if you want to use a quart-sized jar, this is how you can fit it together. So you would just seal up the baggie of fruit. You need about 2 cups or so in there of fruit. There is your first jar, that's the crust. And then of course, whatever fruit you're gonna put in your pie. For the custard jar, I'm using a 24-ounce jar just because it fits really well. But if you don't have one of those jars, just use a quart-sized jar. This is a brown sugar custard. So you put the brown sugar in there and then add a teaspoon of cinnamon to that. This custard recipe is based on a recipe I already have on my channel for my French toast casserole, and it uses the scrambled egg mix. While most custard recipes are going to use just egg yolks, I am using the scrambled egg mix, and I've been so pleased with how creamy a custard you can make with our scrambled egg mix. It's amazing. You do need to add some heavy cream powder, some butter powder, some sour cream powder, but it is a wonderful custard recipe. Yeah, and add the vanilla powder and just a pinch of salt, and that's all there is to this custard. So there are your jars that you could store on your pantry shelf. Look at those layers. Isn't that pretty? I think it's beautiful to give as a gift. So you would just include the baking instructions. When you're ready to make this, go ahead and preheat your oven because this will come together quite fast and you'll need that oven preheated. Start with your custard mix. Pour it into a blender that has 2 cups of water in it and blend it on high for probably 30 seconds. It needs to get really nice and blended. In the meantime, you can get out your fruit and put that into the bottom of a medium-sized bowl. If you're using the freeze-dried fruit, it needs to be refreshed before you put it in the pie. So pour the custard mix straight on top of that fruit. Give it a really good stir, and you just want to make sure every piece of fruit has access to liquid. If you don't rehydrate the fruit really well, it'll just burn in the oven. So set that to the side and then you can work on your crust. First, give it a stir to incorporate the sugar and the salt into the flour, and then add your butter. I've used cold butter, I've used room temperature butter, it doesn't matter. It just has to get incorporated into the flour. I'm using a pastry blender, but you could do this very same thing with a fork if you prefer, or you could put all of it into a food processor. Every once in a while, give that fruit a stir just to make sure that it's getting really good and rehydrated or refreshed. All right, now here's one of my many mistakes. I used a cake pan for this, and that was not a good choice. The sides were just not high enough. So I'm going to recommend a deep dish pie plate for this. So you do need to scoot that pie crust around. Make sure it comes up the sides, and then I just pressed it down with a measuring cup. That is what your crust will look like. You do need to blind bake this for about 15 minutes. But y'all, I totally forgot to do that. I didn't even do that. Oh dear. Anyway, it worked out fine. It was fine. All right, now taste test your fruit and make sure it's refreshed. You want to make sure it doesn't have any kind of a crunch left to it. Okay, here's another mistake. Don't do what you see me doing. Put it on the baking sheet first and then fill the pie because you're going to get some spillage in the oven and you want that on a lined baking sheet. Fill it up and then sprinkle the top with some cinnamon. You want to bake this covered. I covered it with aluminum foil. 350 for somewhere between 30 and 50 minutes. It kind of depends on how deep your pie dish is, how much custard fit in there. See that spillage? That's why you line your baking sheet with foil. You don't want that all over your oven. Keep it in there until it jiggles, but it's not liquidy anymore. See that jiggle? You want that jiggle. The custard has to have a jiggle to it when you bring it out. That way it won't be grainy or split. It'll be perfect. You'll see. So it has to cool completely before you can slice it and serve it. But this is what it looks like if you cook it properly. You'll just have to check on it in that oven. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how long to tell you to bake it. It just depends on so many things. And since I forgot to blind bake my crust, I think I had to bake mine longer. I baked mine for 50 minutes, 50, and it was perfect at 50 minutes. So when I shook the pan, it wiggled and jiggled, but there was no pool of liquid still on the top. You might have to just watch it pretty closely in your oven. If you blind bake your crust, you might not have to bake it so long. And let me tell y'all, it's just the best thing you ever put in your mouth. I'm telling you, I guess it's a southern thing. We like our custard pies, but this is fantastic. That brown sugar custard. Oh, it's so good. It's smooth, it's creamy, but it's kind of light. It's not too heavy, actually. That tart flavor that comes from the Granny Smith apples paired with that sweet custard is so good. That nice shortbread crust. It's such a great recipe. I think y'all are really gonna like this. Oh, and since this is a custard-based pie, you will need to refrigerate your leftovers. And y'all tell me, what do you think about custard pies? Did you grow up eating custard pies? What did you think about them? Do you like them? Or do you eat them now? Have you ever tried a custard pie? Y'all tell me what you think about custard pies. I have also made this same recipe, not as a meal in a jar, but just made this recipe using canned peaches. And I've not made it with the blueberries, but I think it would be just as delicious with blueberries. And if you don't have freeze-dried fruit here, I mean, you could use frozen blueberries. Y'all, this recipe is so good. I hope you try it. I hope you like it. And please do leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. I will leave my full recipe and my shopping link in the description box below this video. Okay, shameless plug. I have written a cookbook. If you like meals in jars, please consider owning my cookbook. It's 112 pages of beautiful meal in jar recipes. I have it for sale on my website. I will include my website in the video description box below and in the comment section. All right, guys. Thank y'all so much for watching. I appreciate you. And God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend. Until next time, y'all take care and keep thriving.